Many thought that the end had come for Chevy's entry-level crossover SUV, the Trax, after the Trailblazer arrived in 2021. But in a rather shocking and unconventional move, the automaker decided to continue the Trax for a second generation, and it's completely overhauled with a larger footprint and improved tech over the previous model. As for Buick, the Envista is mechanically related to the redesigned 2024 Trax, but you wouldn't guess it by its sloping fastback roofline, showing off Buick's take on sporty-looking crossovers like the Audi Q3 Sportback or Genesis GV60. And to help you choose between the two, in this video we'll compare both cars' designs inside and out, pricing, and how they drive. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. The 2024 Trax adopts styling cues from the current Blazer. The running lights along the edge of the hood and the larger trapezoidal opening in the lower fascia are the most prominent similarities. However, this model has split headlights that place the main lamps in the far corners. As for size, it's significantly longer, lower, and wider than the old, awkwardly tall Trax, and the nicely proportioned new model has an almost wagon-like look. The base LS model looks pedestrian with its hubcaps and lack of bright trim, but the LT, RS, and active trim levels are relatively stylish thanks to nice wheels, interestingly shaped headlights and taillights, and distinctive grille trim up front. The 2024 Trax is shaping up to be one of those affordable vehicles that make you look back at it, and that's certainly not something that happens every day for a vehicle in this space or at this price point. Based on the same platform that underpins the Chevy Trax, the Envista is not an SUV, nor is it a car. It's a crossover in the truest sense of the word. It rides on a wheelbase that's similar to that of the Trax, while being 4 inches longer overall. It really looks good from all angles. The Envista is the first production vehicle to use design elements inspired by the Buick Wildcat EV concept. It has the pointy nose, the high wing-like headlights, and the new Tri-Shield Buick logo that also made its way onto the Encore. But the Envista has a swept-back profile, with the roofline giving way to a toned-down example of rear shoulders flaring out over the wheels. The nicely tucked rear end is home to lighting that better matches the units up front. It's slower and sleeker than the Chevy, but in itself more visually at the car end of the crossover spectrum, while the Trax leans more towards SUV. Jumping inside, the Chevy's cabin doesn't look outwardly cheap. The cabin is roomy with a pleasantly low dash that opens up an expansive view forward and to the sides. The dashboard itself is stylish with big round air vents at each corner, and the Camaro-like center air vents placed beneath the piano-like panel that houses the central touchscreen. Build quality seems tight, but we're not too down on the Trax's cheap-feeling interior materials given the low price point. The plastics are hard and scratchy, but the crucial areas, the dash top, the door panels, and the upholstery, at least have some interesting textures to keep them from looking too bargain basement. As for infotainment, entry-level LS and 1RS models get analog gauges with a basic display, along with a smaller 8-inch old-generation touchscreen. But the rest of the lineup gets a fully digitized cluster that only allows one bit of secondary info at a time, such as trip data or coolant temperature, alongside the speedometer, tachometer, and fuel gauge. On the upside, those displays are very sharp and feature attractive graphics and fonts. The larger touchscreen in particular looks great and includes wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. As for Buick, the Envista's aura mostly carries over to its interior, with applications of bright work, textures, and contrast stitching, helping you mostly forget that you are in an economy car. The woven-like material atop the dash, for example, is obviously molded, but it's effective in drawing your eyes away from the uninspired hard plastics that dot the rest of the cabin. Overall build quality is comparable to that in the Trax. The infotainment setup is identical to that in the Chevy. An 11-inch infotainment screen is married to an 8-inch digital instrument cluster behind one stretch of curved glass, an effect that will certainly impress shoppers coming out of older vehicles. Wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are also standard. As for passenger and cargo space, the Chevy seats not only look good, but are also comfortable, but the seat cushions might be a bit short for tall passengers. Rear legroom is great, and despite a roof that is 3.5 inches lower, headroom is unchanged at the front and a hair less in the rear compared to the previous generation. As for cargo space, there is a massive 54.1 cubic feet behind the first row of seats and 25.6 cubic feet with all seats in use. The Envista's good looks and rake groove gobbles up a bit of rear seat headroom and reduces rear window visibility. Legroom is generous for both front and rear seat passengers. An 8-way power driver's seat is standard to all trims, along with heated front seats and steering wheel, but the seat cushion could use a bit more support. The Envista is fine for short hops, but long-distance comfort for several hours might be an issue. Cargo room is limited to 20.7 cubic feet behind the standard 60/40 fold-in rear seats. Fold them down and you get 42 cubes. That's a smaller cargo area than the new Chevy Trax across the board. As for pricing, the Chevy Trax is definitely affordable. The base LS starts at $21,500 and includes cruise control, LED headlights, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and lane keep and assist. Next is one RS at $23,200, while the top-of-the-line Active costs $25,000. Buick, on the other hand, is targeting current sedan owners with the new Envista who don't quite want a fully-fledged crossover or SUV. Pricing reflects this, as the Envista is priced more in line with a small premium car than a utility vehicle. The entry-level preferred trim starts at $23,500, while the sport trim begins at $25,200, and Avenir is listed at $29,700. When it comes to driving and handling, every Chevy Trax features a 3-cylinder engine that's responsive and even sounds interesting, paired with a conventional 6-speed automatic rather than a CVT common in this class. The transmission often tries the highest gear possible, but the latter engine's decent 162 pound-feet of torque helps deliver solid acceleration even without a downshift. Chevrolet also claims the new Trax is a full second quicker to 60 miles per hour than its more powerful, smaller predecessor. This new Trax is similar to the old Cruise hatchback. It delivers surprising ride refinement, rounding off bad bumps with a minimum of head toss and crashing noises. The car rolls down the road with a substantially solid feel and only moderate road noise. Part of the Trax's bump-absorbing acumen surely comes from its size. The wheelbase is large for this class at 106.3 inches, and Chevy ensured that no matter the wheel size, every tire has decent sidewall thickness. Loosen it up on some twisty roads, and the Trax isn't exactly fun. Though its handling is secure and there is minimal body lean in corners, the steering is too slow for the chassis' capabilities and long wheelbase, requiring more input than you'd expect for even gentler turns. As for Buick, perhaps most important, particularly for shoppers in the snow belt, the Envista is front-wheel drive only, one of several concessions made by Buick to keep the prices low. A front drive layout also keeps the Envista's curb weight in check. Under the hood, you will find a 136 horsepower turbocharged 1.2-liter inline-3, backed by a 6-speed automatic transmission, which is the same setup you will find in the Chevy Trax. With an estimated 0 to 60 miles per hour time of around 9 seconds, the Envista won't win any awards for its performance. Ample low-end torque from its muffled engine helps it move around town comfortably and reach highway speeds by the end of most entrance ramps, but there isn't much left in it well beyond that. A transmission that settles into the top gear at the earliest opportunity and can be somewhat reluctant to downshift when prodding the accelerator reinforces its easygoing nature. Should you feel the urge to toss the Envista down a twisty road, it behaves in a nicely controlled manner. Its structure is adequately solid, its brake pedal reassuringly firm and easy to modulate, and what little feel comes through the steering wheel is precise enough. Perhaps its greatest dynamic enabler is the sense of agility brought on by its lower center of gravity compared to the Chevy Trax. Wheel size is also worth noting, as the standard 17 and optional 18 inchers provide a slightly more compliant ride over bumps at the expense of body rolling corners. Conversely, the available 19-inch wheels ride more firmly, yet they bring a Watt-link suspension to the Envista's torsion beam rear axle, which helps discipline the lateral forces acting on the chassis. So, which one should you get? Well, it feels like we are getting less and less for our hard-earned cash lately, which makes a legitimately inexpensive new car an increasingly appealing proposition. The Trax isn't particularly engaging or refined, but its attractive price and lowers expectations to the point where we can appreciate what it offers: a generously sized interior, impressive feature content, and good looks. But it's Buick that gets it here. Though far from sporty and not as polished as its more expensive models, the Envista's shortcomings are largely attenuated by its stylishness and compelling price. As the Buick brand moves to modernize its image with a newly redesigned logo, the Envista makes for a pleasantly affordable car.